Okay. The last kind of section is this kind of stuff that I've been told that I have to tell you. But you should also be able to describe your figures and talk about your methods. So what's a figure legend? The figure legend is a brief description accompanying the scientific manuscript that explains the figure's content, providing context, clarifying symbols, lines, all the crap you use in the figure. But you should be able to understand your figure without the text. You don't need to do online figure. Figure legends that explains it. What's not a figure legend is it's not a place for discussion. It's not a place for adding new information or information not relevant, such as methods. You don't need to know that it's 14%. Yeah, all the rules and all the text. But suffice to say, journals all have instructions on their the figure legend. Some key things, like figure panels should be labeled with uppercase A, B, C, D. If the paper contains a method section, legends should not contain any details of methods. Legends should be fewer than 300 words. So either read these or forget, because they have information. MBOC, so molecular biology of the cell, things like custody journal. So they have a bunch of stuff. Things like begin the legend with figure. When you refer to the figures, capital F, figure, things like that. All information that helps save you time. Make sure you read them. Company for biologists give you a checklist that says things like, have you included the N for your sample size? Have you written it properly as mean plus or minus SCM? The tests and things like that. Other important consideration. Oh, this way. This is good. So methods and materials sections.
Add 2 pieces of bread, get some peanut butter, get some jello in the peanut butter, get a butter knife, put the butter knife in the peanut butter.
So basically saying,
take the butter knife out of the peanut butter.
And he wasn't clear because he's just thrown the knife.
2 pieces of bread, get some peanut
But basically the point is, when you have your methods, you want to make sure that it's really important that people understand it. Replicate it and validate it. Be as detailed as possible. Get someone else in your group to describe that to you after reading your method. If they might describe. You don't need to be brief because often they don't count towards word limits for your publications. So those publications cap around 6,000 words. Methods don't. Please, for the love of God, don't keep putting as described in this publication, and then you go and get the reference and you look it up and it says, and we did it as per this publication. You go on this wild goose chase of publications to find the method, but then it's probably going to be something like, we used a microscope. Right. There's nothing. Make sure you include not only like the physical items, so reagents, equipment, but you reference the software. Using AI tools or code, what prompts we use and things like that. There are publications that describe how you should of the method microscopy. This is a good one by a bunch of microscopists. They talk about what's required, right? So sample prep, talk about mounting media, the slide, the cover slip, what size cover slip you used, what staining, what antibodies, use the microscope, what kind of microscope, what camera did it have, what objective did it have, what type of objective did it have. Not just we use it one time, right? I've got 3,000 different when you did your acquisition, what was the exposure time? What was the step size? Things like that. So we did have in the sections. If you did any analysis, they're all useful. This is another publication by a bunch of imaging nerds as well. So these are the AIC team at Cornelia. This is a generic microscope stand where they say, like, these are all the things you can talk about: the light source, the transmitted light source, the excitation emission filter, objective, the sample, what the detector was. Now, if you don't know what these things are, come and talk to the people at Dave and we know that stuff. We're not moving out on it, so we can help them guide it. I will say that some of these papers go, I think, too far. For example, who has reported in a publication the power density of the sample plane that they use? Not necessary. Maybe if you develop a new microscope and you're comparing it to other microscopes, sure. But if you came to me and said, I want to replicate this study and it's going to use the vast 7 times on photo, if you have to use 80% power, let me mention that much. But you don't need how many microwatts or microjoules per square mile you use. I think that's kind of interesting. But there are still lots of other things that are important, like, who was the manufacturer of the objective, what's the magnification, unit aperture, optical aberration correction. So is it a plane anchor format, is it a C plane anchor format, is it a plane meter for objective? That's important. Here are some things that we found from our facility, at least, at Axis, in publications. Apologies if anyone in the room here recognizes. But Zeiss don't make a 43x objective. There isn't something called a Zeiss XU2. We have a microscope that is not actually what fluoro2, because in this publication they called it a fluoro2 microscope. No one else in the world knows that's not true, but don't do it. Likewise, we had a microscope called Nikon deconvolution. Deconvolution is a method, not inherently used on that microscope. So unless you deconvolve it, putting that in your method you can confuse people. Likewise, live samples were imaged on a Zeiss Axio Observer upright wide field microscope. Not knowing everyone needs to dish out upright system that doesn't exist. The Zeiss Axio Observer is an inverted microscope. Zeiss Observer active imaging and active down to upright. So it's being pedantic, but it's basically publishing wrong information. This one kind of, look, it names all the microscopes they used. What objective, what setting, what about, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting the right information out of it. Come and talk to us today, and 4 days the same, get it back from the first because you know what we fight with their one. Nothing like getting information, because we get people come up and say, oh, this person is saying. You read it and but other people around the world are doing that, thinking about us. That's important. You should also make sure you acknowledge your facility staff. The Royal Microscopy Society has this 4 facilities publication policy document, where basically we're people too, we're important. If you don't want microscopes and you want new microscopes, that's how we get money out of the university. We say, look, 100 publications came out of our facility this year. We want that grant, or we want that money to buy new. It's important. The university does success on those publications and grants. So we need that information, the facility, so that we can get new equipment. I'll admit, I have a grant that's helped by having my name on publication, whether it's an acknowledgement section or an author. It's, I can say, hey, I deserve this money because what I'm doing is helping other people. So make sure you do that. My colleague from MIPS, Monash Institute of Pharmaceutical Science, has a really great document where he talks about, what is authorship, what is acknowledgement of saying, we use the microscope MIPS, and things like that. What is calling out a name, or naming the staff member, and I think it's really useful, and I'm going to find some more type things instead. Because it's hard, right? You go, well, I need the microscope, do I need to put in really heavy? This is a nice set of standards, so I might try to do that. Another thing, since you're all going to be on Rooms by next week, the thing will be, add your publication. When you add a publication in PPS or RIMS, it asks you for things like, well, what microscope is it? Who helped, or who was the person associated? Because all that information you like to know, and that's what helps you get you into it. They all like tiny new toys, so make sure you do that. And that's the end of my section. Any questions on that stuff? Otherwise, we're going to go a deep dive into Adobe Illustrator. Okay.